Okay, so I think we're going to have to start. I would like to thank everybody for joining and also for registering for today's webinar. Today's webinar would be how can the FileCloud Enterprise features make your content management experience be easier and more secure. So in this webinar, we will be talking about what FileCloud Enterprise components can be used to secure contents within FileCloud and how to use enterprise features to secure contents in your FileCloud system. For today's webinar, I will be showing you these enterprise features that can be used to secure data within FileCloud. Some of these components would be content search, metadata, smart classification, smart DLP or data leak prevention, retention policies, and digital rights management. For today's webinar, I'll be showing you how I can use these FileCloud Enterprise components to bring a document into FileCloud or a document with a secure data into FileCloud and apply security components to limit access to the file, such as limit download or limit sharing of the file. So to begin, let me do a demo for you. So I have here, I'm currently logged in to the web user portal. I am logged into the admin portal account. So admin user this is my admin user. So let me show you what I currently have set up so I could show you how the solution would look like. So to start with, I have created a custom metadata set. Um, okay, sorry, let me just log in again. So to start with, I've created a custom metadata set to identify a social security number from a pattern of a social security number from a document. So this is how it looks like. So from here, I've got the metadata name or the metadata set name, social security. I've added an attribute in here, which is a text attribute for social security number. Basically, this will be the property that will be keeping the information with regards to if a document contains a social security number or not. The next component that I've created is, by the way, the next component is what we call the content search or full text indexing. We use Solar Engine to do the full text indexing for documents. What this does is that with content search running as a service, it actually reads off of your documents. So basically, it reads the contents of could be your Word documents, it could be text documents, it could also be images because right now we already support OCR detection from your document. So it could be a PDF file, it could also be an image. If full content search would be able to detect a pattern from your content, and then we could use it later on. Basically, it would actually read off the contents and index the contents as well. So the next component that I will be showing you is what we call smart classification. So using a smart classification rule, I could run content search, and as soon as content search detects a data or a pattern within FileCloud, let's say, for example, a pattern for a social security number, this is the component that will be responsible for assigning a flag or flagging that document and storing that information into a metadata. So let's say, for example, I have a document here that I've created, or I have a smart classification rule that I've created called Social Security or a PII Social Security number. This is how it looks like. So a smart classification rule basically gives you a trigger. This is by default set to file index, which means that this runs every time a file is indexed by content search. And then you'll be asked to put in a definition. We do have a set of examples in the website, in our File Club website that you could use to that you could use for your definition. There's also a rule template here that you could modify. But the current rule that I have currently created right now is that I'm going to be searching for a pattern. And right here is basically a pattern for a social security number. Right now I'm using a pattern set, but I could also use already predefined patterns. And these are based on regex patterns, which I will show you shortly. So this is the pattern that I will need to detect. So the first three numbers would be a combination of zeros to nine. The next set of and a dash, and then the next set of number would be a 0 to 9. That will be two numbers. And then lastly, I have a four-digit number, which will be a combination of zeros and nines, or 0 to 9. So in here, what it does is that as soon as it detects the pattern, it will set the metadata. Uh, I have a metadata set that I've created earlier called Social Security. This was the attribute that I showed you earlier, and it will assign a text value called identified. So basically, it stores this information in the metadata and would let me know that if I open this document, this document is flagged as has a social security number identified on it. So I'll go ahead and cancel that one. So it's already there. Now, the next component that I will be showing you is called Smart DLP, or Data Leak Prevention. These are the access controls that we will be setting up. So if you notice, I've got a whole bunch of them already configured here. But what I want to show you is deny sharing if SSN is identified. So I've already pre-created this. Basically, what this does is that it's going to deny share for files that contain a social security number, or the property is set to identified for social security number. I do have a rule expression in here. The action will be denied and it will enforce, which means that it will enforce the action right then and there. Right now, it's currently disabled. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to enable it. Once enabled, it will implement the restrictions. And then lastly, I'm going to show you um, how I would be creating retention policies later on. But I'm going to be using a different system. So right now, basically, we're retention policies is where you could create um, rules. So to keep documents or prevent deletion of documents for a specific period of time, let's say, for example, you're legally obliged to keep a document, or a document that's identified or flagged to have um, a PII, or personal identifiable information, or could be a social security number, could be a credit card number. So if documents would contain those data, um, we will be preventing deletion of documents using retention policies. So these are the components that I will be using, and we'll be showing you how it would, or how you would be utilizing it. So right now I'm going to switch over to the web user portal, and I'm going to show you that I have a file here. I have two sets of files. I have a PDF file just so I could show you the OCR function. And I also have a Word document. If you notice, the Word document contains a social security number. This is just a sample social security number. And I could also show you here the PDF file. It's basically the same contents. However, they just differ in the file type. So this one's a PDF file, and the other one is a Word document. So let me just close this one out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop these two documents into FileCloud. So basically, I'm importing them into this folder called tests. And you can see here in the file operations that it's uploading the file. So I do now have the files imported within FileCloud. And I'll go ahead and show you how it looks like. So as soon as I import the file into FileCloud, content search runs. We'll do a full text indexing of the contents of each of the files. And as soon as it detects a pattern for a social security number, it will flag the document as identified for a social security number pattern. And it's going to store it into the metadata. So if I select this item right here, the PDF version of the file, and switch into the metadata tab on the details or on the right-hand panel, You can see here that I do have the option to add additional metadata, but there's already an existing metadata, and it says here that the social security number is identified. This tells me that this document contains, as a user, if I look into metadata, this tells me that this document contains a social security number based on the pattern. And it will do the same for the docx document or for the Word document that I've also uploaded. So if I select this, and notice here that since this is a Word document, I also would have default metadata, or I would have additional metadata sets, which is the Microsoft Office tag metadata. Basically, will show you some information about the file itself, but you could also see here that it automatically adds the metadata for Social Security. And if we click on this drop down, it will say it provided a value for identified, which means this document as well contains a pattern for Social Security number. So now, since we've already classified these documents using the first three components, which is content search, metadata, and smart classification, so what happens next? So now, if you remember what I showed you earlier, if we go back to the admin user port or to the admin portal, I enabled the smart DLP rule, so it will deny sharing of the files if it contains this information. So if the social security number SSN attribute equal to identified. So let's say, for example, I want to share this document. If the user wants to share the document, go ahead and click on share. You will notice that there's a pop-up window, or there's a flag on the upper right hand corner saying the sharing is forbidden by a DLP rule, which is the DLP rule that we have created earlier. And it should be the same for the other documents. If I go ahead and click and share, this prevents user from being able to share files with sensitive data or personal identifiable information on it. In this case, it's the social security number. So I could also change this. So if we go ahead and edit the DLP rule, so only admin would be able to access this, or the admin portal, I could change this, or I could change the smart DLP rule action to download. So basically what this does is that it will prevent files from being able to, or from being downloaded or even previewed. So let me go ahead and refresh the session here so we could pull data, or we could pull the changes from the server. Now let me go ahead and open the PDF file. Notice that it gives me an error message saying the download is forbidden by a DLP rule. And basically for the download action, it will be the same as previewing the file. Let's go ahead and take a look at the other file and do a preview of the file. And if you notice, it still says the same. It will also show you which DLP rule had taken effect over the file itself. So this is how we could use the DLP or smart DLP rules, so we could add a level of restrictions on the document that were flagged with this specific metadata. So now, the next thing that I'm going to show you is I'm going to log into another instance. This is a local instance of mine. I'm going to show you that I'm going to set up a retention policy. Let me just log in. Okay. So right now I'm going to show you that I'm going to create I've actually created a retention policy over here. If you notice that I've named this policy prevention, deletion of sensitive data. So we could go ahead and edit this one here. I think we should be able to edit the name as well. Okay. So this policy is already enabled. Let me show you how it looks like. So I have here, I've placed a name for the policy. So I've also placed a description on the policy itself. So basically, it will prevent deletion of sensitive data that is currently stored in this location. So this is just a description. I've set the enabled flag, so by placing a check mark. And then under the apply to policy, if you notice, I've added a path. This is the username, and this is a folder under the username. And then I've also added a metadata. So these are basically conditions. So if the path exists in here, or if the file exists in this path, and if a metadata exists with this value, US Social Security. And by the way, don't confuse yourself. I have this one set to a Boolean value. That's why it's showing us a yes. And then down here, I've set an expiration. This is just for demo purposes. Notice that the expiration would be in a couple of days. So this one's on the 3rd of July. But you could also set the value to be indefinite. So the policy will not expire until for the entire lifespan of your FileCloud system. You could also set specific values like 2 or 3 years or a custom date. And then this value or this setting here that says policy expiration expiry action would allow you to set what happens to the documents once the action expires or once the retention policy expires. So for example, after July 3rd, what happens to the documents? So if you set it to no action, nothing happens to the documents, and users can proceed with manually opening the document and deleting them manually. But if you set the permanently delete value, what it does is that for documents were that applies to the policy or where the policy applies will permanently be deleted. So let's go ahead and let me cancel this one. I'll go and click save. Okay, let me cancel this one here. Okay, so I think so far everything I've not saved the descriptions, but basically this is what my retention policy would look like. Now I'm going to log into the user instance, and I'm going to log in as a regular user here. And let me navigate to that location from earlier. So I've got the test folder. If you notice here, I have the same set of files that I've uploaded. Let's go ahead and examine the file. Let me go into metadata. If you notice, I do have a metadata set called sensitive data. If I click on the drop down, as I've mentioned earlier, I've set this configuration to be a Boolean, so it will be a yes or a no. But basically, it's the same idea. So this one's flagged to contain a U.S. Social Security number, and then the other document would also have the same information. Now, let me go into details. And you will notice here on the right panel under retention policy, it indicates that this file is under effective policy, and this is the policy name that I've created earlier. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the file. And if you notice, it gives me an error message saying delete operation is not permitted. So basically, this file is under the policy that I've created earlier, as well as the other one. You can see it under the right panel when you select the document. This means that both the documents will not be deleted. Nobody will be able to delete the files, even admin users, until we have reached the expiration for the retention policy. However, since I've set this one to permanently delete, as soon as it reaches the expiration, it will also permanently delete the files in that folder, just like so. Now, lastly, I'm going to switch back to the previous to the previous instance. Let me close the other one here. So now I've mentioned something earlier about digital rights management. This is another feature in FileCloud that allows you to export a file outside of FileCloud in a secure manner. So let's say, for example, we've already added those levels of security. We've set a retention policy to deny or to basically not allow users to delete the file. We've also restricted users from being able to share the file or download the file, perhaps, just like this. So now, what other options can user do? So another level of security is that users can export the document. However, so once the file is exported, that means it will be outside of the restrictions that we've added. However, users can still export the file and have the or use the option to export secure doc. What this does is that it exports the file outside of FileCloud into a secure container. Let me do that one again. So I'm just going to do that one on the PDF file. You can see here that the file operation is processing. So what's the idea behind this? So you could export the file and then have it in a secure container. So let's say, for example, you want to present the file to maybe clients or maybe external users. Could be a vendor, could be contractors that needs to view the file, but you only need to show them a portion of the file. And so to prevent them as well from being able to do a screenshot of the file, capture sensitive information from the file, you could utilize our digital rights management tool. What this does is that as soon as I click on export secure doc, this one comes up, the DRM document container. Make sure that you copy the contents of the template here, or you could also just take note of the access key. Uh, this is very important because as soon as you click OK and this window closes, you will no longer be able to access the access key. However, you can still re-export the document again and get a new access key. So in this case, what I'm going to do is let me open up a notepad window here on my end, and I'm going to copy this. Another option that you could do as well is a user could copy this to the clipboard and email this, maybe compose a new email and send this to the users that they needed to give access to for the secure file. So in this case, I've already have a copy of the doc of the template. I'll go ahead and click OK. If you notice, the template number one indicates that to download and install the secure document viewer. The secure document viewer is a FileCloud tool that allows you to open the file um, and be able to view it. So if you notice here, it downloaded the file on my local machine. And give me a moment here. Okay. So this is the file. And you notice here that the file doesn't look like the same document anymore. It says secure doc. It has a timestamp on it. And let me go ahead and open the file. Since I already have the secure document viewer installed on my machine, when I open the file, it would basically look like this. Notice that it would ask me to enter the access key. So this is the access key that I've taken note earlier. So I'll go ahead and copy this, paste it over here, and then click OK. What it does is that it tries to connect to our secure document or to our server, validates the access key. And if you notice, everyone, I would assume that you guys are seeing a black screen right now. Even though I can see the entire document from my end, you might be seeing a window with a black screen. This is part of the feature for the DRM. I'm doing a, oh, give me a moment. If you are not, you should be able, if you're not seeing a black screen, you should be able to see the spotlight view for the document. Give me a moment. Okay. So if you're not seeing anything here, which this means that it's basically working. So the part of the DRM feature is that if I'm doing a presentation, so if I'm right now we're doing a screen share, I'm sharing contents of my desktop computer over the internet, and I'm sharing this over with you. I can see the files or the FileCloud secure document viewer with the document open. However, you guys do not see anything aside uh, from the other windows that I currently have on my desktop machine. this is this is FileCloud's DRM feature working. Let me show you how it looks like now if I disable some of the controls. So let me go back to my web user portal, click on the drop down list. You would see an option here for manage secure docs. If I click on manage secure docs over here, it will give me a list of files that I've recently exported through secure document or through our DRM feature. So notice here that I do have enable screenshot and screen share unticked. By default, this is the or this is the default setting. This is preventing you from being able to see the document that I've opened from the secure document viewer over a remote session or a screen share. Let me put a check mark on this and I'll go ahead and click on OK. And I'll go back to the secure document viewer and reopen the file that I have earlier. Put in the access key. And you should be able to see now FileCloud Secure Document Viewer. With me moving my mouse up and down, you'll also see just portions of the document that I'm presenting to you. So earlier, if earlier I do have, let me go back in here. If you remember, the enable screenshot screen share in Windows has been disabled. So I'm the only one who could actually see what I'm seeing, what we are all seeing right now. But if I disable this, this means that the FileCloud Secure Document Viewer detects that I'm presenting the file over a remote session or over a screen share session, and it basically just blocks you off. You won't be able to see anything. Either you could only see the screen behind the Secure Document Viewer, or sometimes would just be a black screen. Now, other controls that you could do here is that if you can see there's an enable secure view, or this is also what we call a spotlight view. If I go ahead and disable this and click OK and go back to the secure document viewer. By the way, notice that if I move my mouse up and down, you're only able to see just portions of the document. This prevents me. So for example, I wanted to show you this part of the document, but I don't want to show you the social security number that comes with the document. So I could just basically hover my mouse over this way, and you're only able to see just portions of the document. Now, let me go ahead and close it, reopen the file again. This time, if you remember, we have disabled secure view. So let's go ahead and take a look at how it looks like on the secure document viewer. Notice now that you could already see the entire document and not just portions of the document. This is what the enable secure view feature does. Other features, other controls or other security controls that you could enable here is basically you could disable or enable printing. So whoever has access to the file, whoever were given access to this file and have installed secure document viewer, they would be able to print the document. You could also see here that it has an access count. So how many times the file was opened through the secure document viewer would be here. You could also limit the number of access. So let's say, for example, I only want this document to be accessed just 3 times. Put in a number, hit the enter key, and it will set this one to 3. Now, let's see how it looks like. I close the file, reopen it again, put in the access key and click OK. I should get an error message here. This error message, basically, you will be seeing a code, but this tells me that I do not have access to the document anymore. It's because we've set the limit to 3, and that would already be the 4th time that we are accessing the file from the secure document viewer. And ultimately, you could revoke the access. So now what other applications can be done, or what other use cases? So you might be thinking, would it apply to FileCloud when it's actually not within FileCloud and you're sharing it outside? What you could do, another use case for it, is you could just drop the file back into FileCloud. So you've exported the file back into FileCloud. Once it's imported into FileCloud, you could share the file. And remember the notes that we took earlier. You could copy that one, and basically you could do something like share this file, and then you could send it through email, and you could paste the contents that we took note earlier, put in the email address over here, and then go ahead and send it. So this user will be able to receive the link, the share link, would be able to read the message, which tells them to download and install the secure document viewer. They were given the access key, and they should be able to see the file securely. Okay, and so far, that should pretty much sums up my presentation for today. Anybody has any questions so far? If you do have any questions, feel free to send out your mess or ask questions or raise your hand through the Zoom meeting. We'll wait for a few minutes more. We'll let everybody digest all the information and feel free to ask questions. Sorry, I forgot the Q&A button that you can click if you want to ask questions. That should be on your Zoom toolbar. If nobody has any more questions, I hope that I was able to give you an idea on how you could use the components that I mentioned earlier. Let's go back to those components. So one, these are specifically enterprise components. So we've got content search that basically reads off of your data and does a full text indexing of your data. You have metadata that you could create custom metadata sets to store properties or information that's captured from um, the contents of the documents. You have the smart classification component, which allows you to classify the documents, identify which patterns um, are part of, or which patterns needs to be identified. That's also based of regex patterns. By the way, I've missed this one earlier. I wanted to show you. Uh, so we do have regex patterns that have already been created in the system. So let me go into smart classification here from the admin portal. If you go ahead and click on manage pattern group, click on this add new pattern. Notice that we already have a list of existing patterns that you could use. So you could either use the search pattern name or just a search pattern. Just like the example earlier, you could also add additional patterns if you need to. You could put in your regex pattern over here. You can put in a name, depending on your business need. That can be done, and that the patterns that you've added can also be used for your smart classification. And then let me go into, sorry, Smart DLP, which basically gives you the ability to restrict actions such as download or sharing of files if they do have information that's classified. Um, and then you've got retention policies, which prevents users from being able to delete the files if they're classified with the specific information based on the conditions that we added earlier from the example. And lastly, you've got digital rights management, which allows you to export a document in a secure manner and be able to present the document in a secure manner as well. So, yep, so far, I don't see any questions being raised. So I'm hoping I hope this was a helpful webinar for everyone. We will be sending out a copy of the recording of the webinar to everyone who've registered. We will also be uploading the webinar into our website, which is getfilecloud.com/filecloud tutorial videos. If you need anything for any of your support needs, you can always log in to support, send an email to support at codelathe.com, or you could go to help.codelathe.com and open up a ticket, a support ticket. And ultimately, you may visit our website. Our support documentations is in getfilecloud.com/support docs for all of our documentations. And again, I want to thank everyone for joining today's webinar, and you have a wonderful week ahead.